Welcome to HealthPod Africa, where we have conversations on healthcare and related issues in Africa, with the aim being to inspire patient-centered care, improved access to quality and affordable healthcare, as well as promoting sustainable and resilient health systems. My name is Cynthia Oloch, and I am your host. Now, today we'll be discussing fintech and healthcare with a focus on digital payment systems and how this is revolutionizing access to healthcare, specifically in Africa. Now, I have a special guest from, maybe I'll let him introduce himself and then we'll take it from there.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Iman Atwa. I am Lead Mpesa Product Manager from Safaricom, and I'm happy to be your guest.
Thank you very much, Iman, for coming. First of all, I should just thank Iman for being very flexible. We changed the shoot location last minute because Kenya Power did the thing and we didn't have power in our previous shoot location. So we moved here and Iman was flexible enough to join us at this new location. So thank you very much. I should also mention that, so Iman has said that he's Lead Mpesa Manager at Safaricom. What he hasn't said is that he's a very good cyclist as well.
That's how we met.
That's how we met, yeah. So I'm a recreational cyclist. Iman is a bit more competitive than I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you are. But we met through cycling. And at the time, I don't think I even knew that you worked at Safaricom.
So that's the thing. I don't like people. I show up as a cyclist. That's it.
Yeah.
I leave everything away from that.
And that's what I like about cycling, because we all show up as cyclists.
Yeah.
And it's a nice
so about who you
community
are, what you do.
So great. So maybe you can take us through your background.
Okay.
And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, Iman, my name. I would summarize my profile as a tech bro. I think that's the word. But I've been pretty much in the tech space for the last, 12 years. From when I graduated, of course. I've worked in the startups. Did you know, actually, I was a lecturer?
Well, I went through your LinkedIn profile, so I think I saw it.
I was looking for more money. So this was I think I was 22.
What were you teaching?
Mostly programming languages. So Java, C++, cryptography, actually, cybersecurity and all that stuff. But I was an assistant lecturer. I was assisting a professor. More like when you graduate and then you try and figure out stuff. But it was also because of a bit of a scholarship I got after graduation. So it was.
And what did you study?
BBAT.
Okay.
Yeah, the famous BBAT. Over the weekend, someone said it's a tech with a sprinkle of business. Yeah, so that's what I did in my undergrad. And then for the master's, I did mobile telecommunication and innovation.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, after that, I worked in a startup for about 4 years. I think I grew the most during this time. Again, my role was purely on pushing customer experiences through products, working with software developers. I started as a software developer, but then I'm never ashamed to say about it, talk about it. I was always never the best in the room. I'm very competitive.
I know you're very competitive.
If I'm not the best, I'll ditch whatever it is. So quickly I realized I'm taking double the time to do something that someone takes half the time. And that was, for me, very clear that I need to think of other alternatives. But slowly I realized easier with just thinking through the solution and documenting it down and meeting customers, translating the same information to the devs and how to deliver the experiences. Yeah, so I did startup for about 4 years, 4.5. Then I went to banking. I was at I&M Bank. Again, I went there as a innovation manager, something like that, within the digital fintech arm of the bank. Set up just ring-fenced from the culture of the rest of the bank to drive solutions for the bank. It was an interesting experience. Did it for 2.5 years. And do I miss it a bit? I struggle from a point of regulation. Kenya is overregulated. So a lot of things you are doing, CBK had to give a note. And thinking of innovation means you're trying to do things that have never been done before. So I think that was a bit of a discouragement.
Is it really overregulation? Because I feel like industry is always ahead of regulation.
Yes.
So
you can't regulate what is not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, is it really overregulated?
It is. And I'll give you an example. One of the products that I launched was WhatsApp banking. My role was a group role. So for I&M Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Now, this product only launched in Tanzania and Rwanda. And their regulators gave it a nod to launch. But in Kenya, it didn't work. We kept having, I think we had almost over 10 meetings.
What was the challenge?
There are common things that are thrown around from regulation. Who owns the customer? What is the KYC process? How do you onboard the customer, basically? Our securities around it. Then we're integrating with WhatsApp platform owned by Facebook. Or should I say Meta? I don't know. And at that time, there was a bit of controversy around the same organization. So it was a bit of a flag, like, hey, are we going to expose customer data in Kenya to some global organization and that kind of stuff? So sometimes about the impression created in a meeting and not even the details.
And this was before we had our Data Protection Act?
It was just coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is around 2019. And it's actually 2019.
2019 is when, it came in.
So it was pretty much new. So 2019, 2020, this is when this was happening. So what I learned is they don't approve what they don't understand.
So then it's up to industry to help them understand.
Yes. So interestingly, actually, I've had my former colleagues senior to me who've actually joined CBK. We were working with them with the same project. I won't mention names, but if they might watch this. They're now in CBK. And it's easier because then we realize we need people from our side, people actually providing and developing the service. I'm avoiding to say that to move into CBK because then they can be able to understand the pain points of customers. They need for us to improve the kind of experiences we put in the market and then support from a regulation. So sometimes you want to approve something in good faith. I don't know, in kind. I don't know what word to use. But then we can work with things like sandboxes just to make sure we can test the solutions to protect customers. You keep your safety of the customers and the banks, but then you allow for the industry to move forward in terms of innovations. So I hope that it's changed, but it's one of the reasons why I actually left banking. And then I stopped judging bankers for not delivering and innovating.
Because you were one of the people not delivering and not innovating.
Before that, you can say I used to judge them harshly. I used to think that they're very rigid in terms of how they do the work, but then got in there and then I'm like, now I get it. So I did my best, I tried my best, but then now I see differently. I think it's part of growth.
I guess so. Yeah.
Then I went out to Safaricom after that.
So now maybe tell us a bit about your role at Safaricom.
My role at Safaricom. which one? Okay. Of course.
The current one. Let's talk the current one.
Working as a product manager around the Mpesa ecosystem. It's pretty much, I work with software developers. Let me start by that. So I have a team of about 13 software developers. So it's a mix of software developers, UI, UX designers. We have business analysts. We have a quality assurance, quality engineer, and all that. And our role is purely, the objective is basically to deliver superior financial services to customers around the Mpesa ecosystem. And currently I'm focusing on developing Mpesa groups platforms. In Africa, community is very key, and people tend to do things in groups. So we've had a look at how might we deliver an experience for groups in Kenya, such that you can come and you focus on, probably you can save as a group, you can get credit as a group, you can also invest as a group. So that is basically what I'm focusing at the moment. But my colleagues at large are actually working within, focusing on what you're doing for government. So think of it as the Mpesa for government. I know what you're already thinking. But of course, health, I don't know. But health is also one of the things you're actually trying to improve the experiences in the health sector. And I think that's also part of what you're going to be talking about today.
Yes. Excellent. So now that brings us to, I guess, the main topic of our discussion today, which is Fintech and healthcare. How is Fintech or mobile money solutions, how is that impacting access to healthcare in your view?
Okay. So when you think of fintech, there are two things coming together, financial and technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you think of those two, the finance part of it, and then the technology part of it, then you think of health, you can start to see how they correlate and how they actually have a point of convergence. Fintech is pushing its boundaries in a lot of industries, and I know some people call it different names. They'll say health tech, probably instead of fintech in health. And those kind of stuff, or maybe agri-tech and stuff. And it's open. I mean, anyone can call it. You can call it whatever you want, as long as people are clear.
Yeah.
I heard that when it comes to communication, you communicate at it's the audience. It's at the mercy of the audience, something like that.
How
it's
they
not what
understand.
I think. Not what you think they need to understand. Yeah, but back to how that correlates. One of the biggest value propositions for the fintech industry is payments, if I can just start from there. Payments, why? Because it's actually primarily, I would say, the foundation of fintech, because we had finance, traditional finance, if I might call it that. And then we have the evolution of technology becoming such an enabler on how finance operates. Finance meaning things to do with payments. Credit is also one of the big pillars within that space. Things to do with transfers. So transfers means how do you move money, whether you're sending someone or receiving money. And it has a lot more other value propositions. So themes that have come around this, some people call it embedded finance, when you're talking of investments becoming part of it. And it goes on and on, because as of lately, you'll hear of AI and how it's actually being a foundation to some of these industries, including health, But back to what you've just asked on fintech and health, you cannot consume health services without the concept of payment. And if you are in Kenya, you'll understand how rooted Mpesa is in the market, in the sense that when it comes to payment, people actually think for Safaricom, the competitor is Airtel and stuff, but our competition is cash. So cash still remains to be king. And I like what someone said recently, that we are fighting for probably 20%, all of us, in terms of digitization of payments, yet 80% is still out there, that is in terms of cash. Yeah. So
are you saying that in Kenya, people like 80% are still using cash?
You'll be surprised.
I am actually very surprised.
I will confirm the numbers, but cash is actually still king.
Okay.
And I know you and I and a lot of people who are watching, probably because you almost rarely have cash nowadays. It's an assumption mentally. You assume that everyone don't have cash. But the more you get, especially outside Nairobi, you start to realize how actually cash is still very dominant and it's still very king. So while we've made a lot of progress in digital payments and digital transfers, cash is still one of the space that you can push further to drive and to grow, especially for people offering this kind of services. So when you think of health, you can't access health. There's an aspect of payments. And that's why people in the fintech space have extended the kind of value propositions to the health sector, to see how might we empower hospitals or health centers to receive payments of the health services they've offered to the customers. I mean, I'll call them customers, but I mean, these are patients and all that, or even people who bring the patients. Because of ease of payment, you go to any dispensaries, level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever it is. Sometimes I lose track of those whatevers. But then you realize that it's very common nowadays for any health center or hospital to find a pay bill or a till number, because then it's expected that a payment should be made through Mpesa, not just cash. There are people who pay with cards and all that. But that is like the entry level, you will notice. But you're also getting advanced kind of how fintech is offering and empowering this industry from a point of solutions that are now actually customized and designed to empower the experiences. We have cases whereby you'll go to a hospital, you finish your payment, and then instead of having to type in a pay bill or a till number to make a payment, you get a prompt on your phone. So you find in such cases a fintech provider or someone in that space, they've given you a platform which has all the way from triage to coming to what have you consumed or what have you been treated about, coming all the way to invoicing and billing, which is still part of what is offered. which are then a point of payment. They have options. Are you paying with card?
Yeah.
Are you receiving cash? So if it's with Mpesa, then they'll ask you for your phone number. Or sometimes they'll just confirm because they have your records that is this the number you're paying from. Yeah. And if you confirm, then you get what you call an STK push. And then you complete without having to read the pay bill number or even the amount to enter, which is very seamless. All you do is enter your PIN and then a payment is done. Okay. So those are some of the advanced kind of levels that are coming in. But then still on the same, what you've asked, you find now one of the biggest challenges you have is, I probably think we'll address it later on, but just from a point of, the point is there's a push in terms of the level of value being offered by the fintech within the health sector. Not just, so it started like, yeah, just pay with M-Pesa. This is the till. To a point whereby you find this is becoming really part of it. Thinking of the journey of the patient from when they walk into a health center all the way to when they exit, and even beyond that. And then
I can ask this question now that you've talked about the patient journey. As an M-Pesa product manager in the health space specifically, do you consider the patient when developing these solutions? Do you?
It's a definite yes from a point of, actually my boss just had what we call service designers. He's an interesting gentleman, very smart. So service designers are thinking of the journey of the patient. And you want to imagine, how do I walk into the hospital?
A service designer is someone's title. What
yes.
is it? Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
It is actually. And I'm happy you're asking because it's pretty new.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
We've been used to user experience designers, the so-called UI UX designers. Yeah. But then this is like another level of a service being designed. So you're thinking of what is the service being offered? So say, treatment, I don't know what to call it, you know, but then what is the journey? So you're designing that experience right from when you walk into the gate, how you're identified, coming to the triage, some of these things. We have advanced levels where you're thinking of by the time you're walking into the patient, we have cameras and stuff. I mean, those are some of the dreams we have. We can be able to actually tell who you are. By the time I'm showing up to the nurse, you have my information. You get this kind of stuff. And you can tell your history and all that. In most health centers right now, even hospitals, you find there's no integration of all this data. So we have siloed kind of databases. To even big hospitals, you can go to one, I'm not saying Aga Khan, but an example of, say, if it's Aga Khan or AR, you go to one, you find your information probably is not replicated in another branch. Yeah. Probably Aga Khan, these are advanced hospitals, but when you start looking at quite a number of them, you might find you have to give the same information to a branch of the similar hospital you have. So service designers are looking at it from what is the experience, what are the touch points, who do I talk to at what point, you know?
At Safaricom, and I don't know if you're able to answer this, what would be your role in terms of the medical record aspect?
Yeah.
Like, is it like linked to someone's mobile phone so that with the phone number you can then, like I'm just trying to figure out from where you sit, what would be your role?
So the role is, will always be technology, as a technology provider, because you, as a tech provider here, you offering what you call the database of these patients, you know, and you're looking at it from a point of how do we store the patient information? What information of that patient are we storing, for instance? I know there's a whole data protection kicking in from a point of you want to not everyone can access the information. The privacy is very key, sensitivity and all that. We have things like data minimization, you know, and masking of the phone numbers. And you might have seen a bit of that in the market, not just health, you know, because it's part of the policies and the requirements from the Office of Data Protection.
Actually, speaking of data protection, and I was just reading it's called the ODPC, Office of the Data Protection Commissioner.
Yeah.
And there's a report that was recently released. I think it's by Kenya ICT Authority Network. Yeah. And it says that the health sector is one of the biggest culprits in terms of flouting privacy laws.
Yeah.
So, and I'm guessing when it comes to digital records, then there's need for higher sensitivities around protecting that security.
Exactly. And I think the beauty of us even being in that space is we sometimes heavily find we can comes to these kind of things. Being a big organization, your responsibility is even larger to make sure even the partners you're working with are complying to this. So you cannot be integrating to a platform you're developing as a partner, then you don't comply. And you've had those very strict conversations with our partners that the fact that you are plugging into our platforms, these are the bare minimums that you have to comply. So yes, that is also very key on how we store the patient records and everything. And then also not just, because you have now what you call the KYC, patient KYC, if I may call it like that. Basically your data that doesn't change much, your who you are, your name, CTC and all that. But then there's a medical information that changes over time, the history of your treatments and all that. Because from time to time when you come to hospital, maybe you're coming for something different, or if it's something that happens over a period of time, then you want to track how is your recovery and all that. It can be handled by different doctors, but then at the same time, we want to make sure that there's consistency. I think it's annoying when I go to a hospital that I've been going and then I have to explain to a new doctor why I'm here. Yet they have my records. It's that's how service designers also want to think. Put yourself in the shoes of the patient. How is the experience? And then also you want to think of guardians, so people who bring patients. So sometimes some patients that don't have the capacity, maybe based on the condition, they're not the ones you're interfacing with. So how do you accommodate and tie the profile of the guardians to their records such that when I come in, I'm the caregiver? So how do you map caregivers on the profile of a patient such that even if it's a payment, and also you find they're also authorized to actually view the patient records if I were to query, because probably it's my father, mother, or something like that, then I'm authorized to actually have a view of that. So those are unique. What we do is we look at what is the actual reality on the ground. Then you make sure that the products you're putting out are actually centered and guided by that.
Okay. Interesting. So maybe you've mentioned one of the, I don't know if I can call it a challenge or not, the issue of data protection. So Fintech, developing solutions for healthcare. What are some of the challenges around that space?
I'll start by, how do I put it? The siloed approach. There's a lot of silos from a point of everyone seems to have their own records,
By everyone, you mean?
By everyone, I mean the health centers or the hospitals, etc. Okay. You want a scenario whereby some years to come, regardless of if I move to Aga Khan, I went to Nairobi Hospital, then they can query the same
An
database.
Integrated type of system. So
not having that, it still remains a problem, not just in Kenya, but largely in Africa, because you have different health service providers coming with their own siloed solutions. And I think that's why there's a move for the tech providers to see how can we consolidate. Even if you may not have one platform, one organization doing everything for everyone, but can we have a central, records? And I think that's now in conjunction with people like Ministry of Health that need to also have a role to play to make sure that are you licensed as a medical practitioner, for instance? And then how do you access this information? Because it is for the good of everyone. That by my, say, national ID, you can query and you can get anything about me if you're licensed to query my information as a health practitioner, and you can be able to treat me. I don't need to print things and take them somewhere. So this problem remains big, not just in health. Think of even banks at the moment. I don't know if it has changed, but you have seen scenarios whereby if you want to move, if you're banking with one bank, for instance, and then you want a loan with another bank, they'll tell you, go tell them to give you your bank records. Then probably they print for you whatever stamp. Then you take to the bank you want. But then when you think about it, why can't we have a bit of integration? It's a whole crazy conversation because people now are like, it's this data is our strategy. It's our core of the business, and probably we've built it over time and all that. And I get it. But you can see the kind of
And it's personal data as well.
It's also personal data, But then you have cases whereby you have things like authentication. How do I put it? There's a way you can centralize. It's stuff to do with, should I call them open? We used to call it open banking. Those are terms whereby you authenticate. I can authorize you to access my records as another provider. And if I authorize you, then it means then it's me giving you consent. So you deal with the issue of privacy and whatever.
Yes, because consent will have been provided.
Yeah. But currently, I think we have a problem because the institutions want to hold on. So that strategy by silos I don't think it's sustainable for too long. I think time is coming when it's going to break. And the same thing is also applying in health.
Yeah.
So that is one big challenge we experience. But then, of course, simple things like connectivity, internet. So you might think when you're in Nairobi, that's very basic. But then when you visit our country, things get really sad. And it's very demoralizing and all that. We have basic needs, for instance. What devices do we use to access these platforms? So that is also a gap we have. So you find if you're offering a platform, you have to think of what are the devices of access, whether they're tablets for these doctors, whether they're computers for the nurses, etc., or the labs. There's a physical, the hardware part of it that needs to be taken care of. It goes even crazy sometimes. You find it's the physical needs. Where is the building? What is the status? Are there beds? I don't know. Sometimes when you think of African problems, you feel like you need to figure out what part you can do, and then maybe someone else can support.
Because resources are limited, so I guess you have to pick your priorities.
And that's why what I've learned is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very real. That if I don't have a place to sleep, a bed to sleep in as a patient, you're telling me to dial USSD to access my records. You get that? It's very disconnected.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I've not even eaten in that hospital, I've been admitted. But then you're telling me like, yeah, there's an app here. That's what product managers sometimes get obsessed with. We have an app for health. You can only check your records. Sounds nice in a boardroom. Yeah, but then the moment you get on the ground, you realize it's so far-fetched for these guys. If you don't take care of the physical needs, then your solution as you're addressing something on luxury or maybe, I don't know, at a higher level of that hierarchy, you disconnect. So you find you have an amazing solution, but it has no impact. So those are the things we try to, and I try really to avoid that.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Especially the issue of, dealing with people's immediate needs, food, whatever, before giving them a code to access. But then again, when someone is sick and there's this digital platform they can use and they have a phone, I mean, it's helpful that they don't have to. Let me give an example. I was talking to one of the guys involved in the Muranga telemedicine project. And what they say is that the reception has been very good because people now have access to doctors that they wouldn't have had access to. And then they don't have to travel to maybe a level 4 hospital. So they can, basically they're decongesting the level 4s and 5s because now patients can go to the local dispensary and then get a virtual, consultation, with a doctor who is in that other hospital. So I guess there's two sides to it.
It's interesting when you talk about that. I'll give you a platform. When I was still in the startup, we were vendors to Safaricom.
Okay.
Feel like I've just been around this giant for too long. So we're doing a platform called SurePay. So SurePay is a closed loop payment system. Closed loop simply means, I know those are internal jargons, but what it simply means is you have a donor, and this solution is actually in the market today. So you have donors like USAID who want to offer donor funds, so basically donor help to, patients and all that. And probably you have funds you want to dedicate to for the health priorities of people in a certain community. But then what used to happen is they'll come and say you have, say, maybe some $200,000 you want to put there, and of course, if you are a donor, one of the biggest things they're keen on is accountability. You get, but then you give in cash to buy people to beneficiaries. You call them beneficiaries in that space to access medicine. If a mother needs care for the child, etc., and all that. But then you realize this is a community in a very remote area. You find people have not had food. They've not eaten probably even a day or two. What you realize is, fine, you're giving them access to 2,000, for instance, per beneficiary. They've been registered and all that. When you give them cash, what do? Research actually shows that people will be sick, but if I've not eaten, I will not buy medicine. I will actually want to get food for myself or my child, something like that first. Then I'll think of, oh my God, I have a headache. oh my God, I'm going through this. So to address those kind of scenarios, which some people can argue that is a bit selfish, we came up with a solution. Again, solutions are crazy. Sometimes they're very morally conflicting. That's very personal opinion. Such that we have different health centers that you can sort of redeem your medical expenses. So it could be a pharmacy or a hospital. And then as a beneficiary, you assign, say, 2,000. But that 2,000 is not real cash. That 2,000 is like a token. So if you are sick, you can go to that health center and then you validate and then you can redeem that 2,000 worth of service, whether it's medicine, etc., or treatment. That is the only way we found that you can actually lock these funds, donor funds, to actually address the health sector. But how sustainable are some of these kind of things? So it's a bit of controversy. And I think when you talk of that space, what I've really seen is there's always a prioritization of needs. And that's where the real problem is. It's not addressing solutions that work in Nairobi. The moment you get outside Nairobi, that's when you ask yourself, if you don't have impact in those communities, then you just have a fancy app, a fancy whatever, which really sounds nice in a boardroom in Nairobi. But then it doesn't change lives. And
I've just remembered, there are other factors that affect healthcare, like social determinants of healthcare. So there's like the food you've mentioned, water, shelter. So I guess it just requires a holistic approach towards improved access to healthcare. And I also wanted to mention, you talked about the integrated health system as lack of that as being a challenge. And I just wanted to mention that I think it's covered under the Digital Health Act. So the plans are there. Of course, how it shall be rolled out is a different story, but hopefully it shall be rolled out in a manner that that benefits patients.
I'm liking that you bring that up because it's never about the technology. As I've been in tech for quite some time, and I can confidently say that statement.
That you've been in it for quite some time.
I used to want to say that when I graduated. I would meet
now
people,
you've earned your stripes.
Yeah, I would meet people. I was 3 months into the industry. I was like, hey, there's nothing I can put on my profile, but I can say that anyway. That's a joke on the side. Technology is never the issue. There are policies. The political environment is a big factor here. You'll have you've heard of guys going to Naivasha for 2 weeks. Strategy, those things, I'm sure you've heard of them. But then implementation is where actually it comes in. Who are you giving to implement, for instance, Sometimes you had flawed processes. You have people who have capacity to implement getting the contracts. Why? Because they know someone. And then you do a shoddy job. You have something that does not actually work, but because people have been paid, so those kind of stuff. You have sometimes they remain nice to have in like these documents or the proposals or plans, but then there's no implementation. So I hope things can change, even from a very leadership perspective in our countries, in Africa and all that people can think of the big picture of what is the impact of these kind of things that are happening.
Great. So I guess my next question is on data, and you touched on it. As you're developing solutions in healthcare, do you rely on data in terms of, patient data, you've talked about the patient experience. Do you rely on that data to develop a solution that then addresses whatever challenges are?
So that's actually one of the foundations. So before we actually develop anything, there's a lot of user research that we do, because from that, then you have the data, which then you transform into some sort of information that you can consume and have conclusions of what needs to be done. And we have my colleagues, because I'm not exactly in the health tribe or department, as you call it, but you'll find they spend a lot of time in hospitals. They'll spend a lot of time observing. You've got cases where you just come in, sit in a health center, and you act like you're not even from, wherever you are. But the point is, how can I observe the experience? So you can pick patterns, and these patterns are actually, they point to gaps of what needs to be done. So it's very unbiased. No one is no one is acting it at that point. You can pick the experience of even the staff, the health staff, how they're behaving, the frustrations of nurses, the frustrations of doctors. What we've seen is sometimes they do a lot of, it's interesting how human beings or human mind works. You have a problem, but then you find a workaround, and then you do it for too long. You forget actually it's a problem because you used to how this is how I work. I don't know, my dad is a TV I had growing up. It was a Great Wall. Can tell you a bit of how old I am. A red one. It used to have issue that my dad would slap it.
And then it would
changamka. Yeah. So I'm like, I came to think about, I'm like, what was wrong with that TV? There's a way you just to slap it or something, and then it works. Shakes, and then you see Buddy Mutsini, those guys, or so Lemdo still used to be there. He was a young man.
That's not too long ago then.
No, it is. I was a young boy. But the point is, you get used to these kind of issues, how to work around problems. And you see that a lot in hospitals. You find nurses, because they have to find a way to make it work. You have queues and everything. So you get used to that. But then you realize whatever you're observing is not the optimum kind of experience you want. It's not the desired. It's just a workaround. So there's always a way you can pick out. And this is part of the data we use to map out the gaps. And then you can basically, I think one of the biggest wins for me is mapping out the experience of all the users. So who are the users that you're addressing? So your users here are like patients. You have the caregivers who are also users. You have nurses, those are users. You have people in accounts and finance department who are receiving and clearing patients. What is their journey like? At what point do they plug into the process? We have doctors. How do they plug in? You have the laboratory guys, the lab technicians. How do they plug in that space? You have even security. You have sometimes cases where people are rudy and whatever it is, you never know. And how do they also come in to take care of those kind of things? We have administration of the hospitals. You also have to map. What do they see? What are they interested in? People are tracking the performance and just how the hospital is performing and all that. So when you look at all this, they give you data source points. And that is what we use to actually map out. By the time you're coming in to actually start what you're calling a minimum viable service, you have very good information on what is informing that. And then we keep working with people within the same space to retest and confirm that whatever you're developing, does it make sense? And then finally, once we even put to market these solutions, we have what you call usability testing in product management. You basically, I'll come give you the phone like now you have, and then whether you know or not, we can be conscious and unconscious, but I'll be observing to see how you play around with it. So if you're struggling to log in or you take a while, I'm like, I will map the faces you're making. That is part of the usability testing. I want to map what you call emotion, mapping of the emotion. We call it emotion mapping or mapping of the emotions. You want to see what are the emotions you go through as you experience a product, or whether it's a gadget or, just a software. And is it light? Is it happy? Is it flat? Are you not wowed? Is it low, frustrated? All those things are data points that actually do inform us on whether you've got it right or not. And it's about being honest, because for product people, you get to fall in love with your product, unfortunately, because that's what you do every day when you wake up. And it's always harsh when you hit the market and then you realize it's not as fancy as you thought. It's always heartbreaking. You have sometimes to disconnect from that and be like, man, we got it wrong.
Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, a lot.
Okay.
If you're experienced in products, you can't tell me you haven't gone through that. Okay. That's how you grow, actually, because you learn most in that than when you put a wow document or wow product in the market. So as you fascinated by it, you find someone is unbothered. You've had cases where you launch this and then, the whole thing of saying, Kenya has X number of percentage. Is it like 60% or what? Of smartphones, whether they're like even cheap ones. These numbers are misleading because sometimes you find a user has a smartphone, but then that smartphone is so smart. You have a product. First, they don't have memory to even download anything if it's an app, for instance. So by the time they're trying to download, they have to delete other apps. Now that's problem number. I experienced this in Kathonzweni. Kathonzweni is somewhere in Machakos, those sides. So they delete stuff, but then as they're doing that, then they want to download. They tell you, "Hey, I don't have data. I don't have mobile data. So can you buy me something to download?" So, and this app is probably 20 MBs or something. So to you, 20 MBs is almost, you don't even think about it. But for them, that is also a problem. So they have to again download. So they finish, the screen is so small. But what were you testing with in the office? Your nice big iPhone, Samsung CTC. It looks amazing on that.
On that point, let me just ask a question on this mobile phone penetration.
Yeah.
So lots of research and reports online
indicate that mobile phone penetration has actually been beneficial for healthcare. But what I'm hearing you say is that don't believe everything you read online.
No.
That it might be a phone, but maybe not a phone that is actually...
It's not all the phones. And this, I'm telling you, this happened last year in around November.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the products we done for county governments. It's a product I launched last year.
My County. Is that what it's called?
Oh my God, you know it.
I did my research on you.
Oh, that's nice. My county, that is. Okay. So we were going through counties and all that, and it was actually humbling to realize that what you think I always say, what you think in the boardroom, the excitement, cut it by half. Yeah. Because that is a reality on the ground, or even less than that. So that happened. So you find, and I have a photo of that, maybe I'll share it if you want, of that customer, because one of my colleagues took it because I was frustrated in a dusty market and everything. And this guy has a phone to a point I'm wondering, what version of Android are you on? The OS. To that level. So I have to figure out what. So I came thinking I'm just giving you an app for you to use for payments. But then I have to figure out all the other problems first. Which phone? Internet. The phone is not actually working. It's just very slow. Yeah. And I don't know what. This guy, remember, he's in the business of doing his life. Yeah. This guy, I think, works in a market. So you're wasting his time. Remember that. So he's also getting frustrated because he's like, why am I giving you 20 minutes of my day for me to collect what I'm collecting? So all those things put together, and it's not very different in the health sector. So you start to realize it's the reality. And I think always, I'm in this point where I go to the market, go to that health center, go there. That's where the solution, that's what actually confirms if you've delivered value or not.
Yeah. Now, maybe a final point. I don't know, what advice would you have? And this is for people maybe looking into venturing into the health tech space, fintech space. What advice would you give?
Yeah, one of them is uphold dignity. For this, it's not, how do I put it? It's not like doing a product if you're a technology service provider for financial services, like maybe for a bank or mobile money platforms and stuff. There's something about dignity when people are sick. It comes with a lot. In some places, there's even shame that comes with those kind of conditions, etc. But how can your platform uphold their dignity and protect them from those kind of scenarios? And it's also why the sensitivity of this data is very key. I think it calls for higher moral authority or ground.
So basically put the patient first.
Yeah. And it's not just about the technology anymore. When I did BBIT, there's a research that was done when you were still in school. It was done by people ahead of me who had graduated in Strath, and they asked them of the units that we did, which one has the highest impact, almost 5-6 years into the market of working and all that. Now, before they got the answer, we thought it would be like, cryptography, Java, script, whatever, programming, and those technical units. But actually they said it's ethics. It's ethics. And now if I were to get that survey, I will actually respond with that too. Yeah. That the ethics we did in school, whether it's business ethics, whatever, it actually remains to be the foundation of, without knowing, because those things you don't want to lose your conscience around the work we do. There has to be a line you draw and be like, this is not good, And
I think it applies in all spheres of life.
Exactly.
Yeah? We need to be ethical in everything that we do.
The morality of what we do, I think you can really underestimate it when you want to offer the technology for the health space. You have to think of the fact that also today you're thinking of those patients as users of your platform. You'll be shocked that one day that user will be your family member.
Yes.
They say as you age, it's so stupid to think it can never happen to you, whatever that is.
That's true.
You always think, maybe it's those are like numbers, you see in them, whatever. If you ever think it can happen to you, then it's a bit of foolishness. Yeah. So that's the things I would advise people who are doing work in the health space, because I think comes down to life and death.
Yes.
I also think of it from a point of, if you go to very detailed kind of solutions that are very medical, AI, the research and all that, I was talking to someone I met in some school visit I've been doing in schools and all that. And I think their lab, they're looking at cancer, chemotherapy and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me that they've had cases whereby I'm happy I don't remember his name and where he works, so I can't talk about it. He said that we've had cases whereby patients have died sooner than was expected because of a mistake that was done by a practitioner. And what made me so sad about it is because you start to see how your actions have a very big impact. It's actually a matter of life and death.
It is.
When you're offering solutions in this industry, it's not just about you. So if you have like a lack of not really good systems you're putting out, things that manipulate information or data, you don't protect patient data and all that, it goes down to the life of someone.
Yeah. No, I get it. And that's a very good parting shot there, that we really must remain ethical and uphold integrity in everything that we do.
And it's sad because it starts with the technology, but then you start, that technology has to be what keeps and sustains this kind of solutions that we do. The morality and the Bob Collymore used to say something, people before profit. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
And when you're younger, they don't make a lot of sense.
Now it does.
But as you age,
I
always say that, and people are like, what age?
People before profit.
Yeah, like but that. People before profits, and the dignity is very big. And that's why things like Fuliza has also been, it was in the same. There's a technology part of it whereby data showed we have a lot of failing transactions. And those same failed transactions, after like a minute or two, someone still attempts to do it and it goes through. So that is data informing you that there's a gap. What is the gap? People always trying to pay for something, send money, etc., but then they don't have sufficient balance. But it's not because they don't have the money. So the money is somewhere in a bank, for instance, or in Mpesa cash or something. So they deposit in Mpesa and then do the same transaction. So why don't you allow them to finish and then do like an overdraft kind of facility? So that is the technology part of it. And that is basically the birth of Fuliza. But then you realize someone somewhere in a hospital, someone somewhere needs medical attention, someone somewhere needs whatever it is, it's an emergency and all that. And probably they have cash that they don't have at that point. And you need 10,000 to pay, I don't know for what. Allow them to have that transaction because it's a matter of life and death. And that's why you start to see how impactful these solutions are in this space. It's not just the technology. It's not just the fintech part of it. It connects to the life of people, the dignity especially. I don't have to, sometimes I don't want someone to be like, hey, help me 2,000 so that I can buy medicine. You get, there's the likes of even mshwaris and stuff and all that. That allows you to actually have a better experience with dignity intact and all that. So I think that's what I would say for people in that space. If you are, I think you can relate to what I'm saying. If you're getting there, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. You need to go sit in the worst of medical centers. If you can map out a solution for those centers, then that is really impact. But not we're okay in Nairobi, we'll have this kind of solutions, it works. But I think that's where the difference is. Then think of the journey, not just the technology. Don't just come and bow some nurse somewhere in Cathozonia. I have an app. I can tell you for a fact, they don't care about an app. But what are they starting? What is the journey? Sometimes it just comes to, and then let's partner, I think, as I finish. See how different service provider partners. I don't know. Collaboration is key. There's someone who's just offering the donor foods and whatever. There's someone who's offering clothing. That people actually building the actual hospitals. You come in with the tech. Tech without these physical needs being taken care of, that tech won't sustain itself.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we wind up today, so we are recording on the 9th of October. Next week, Iman is cycling to Diani. He's cycling from Nairobi to Diani. I guess by the time this airs, he will have cycled and come back. I hope he shall make it. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
I am pretending I'm very confident. But it's
How
exciting.
many kilometers?
560.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's over 4 days. Day 1 to Kibwezi, day 2 to Kibwezi to Mtito. Is it Mtito and Day, I think? And then day 3 to Voi. No, it's day 1 to Kibwezi, from Kibwezi to Voi, if I'm not wrong. and then day 3 from Voi to Mombasa, and then day 4 from Mombasa to Diani.
All the best. I would have liked to join, but
you should.
My fitness levels are close to 0.
There are buses when you get tired, you can jump in the chase cars and all that.
All the best with that.
Thank you.
Enjoy yourself, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a very interesting conversation. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And this is episode number.
Not sure yet, but I'll let you know.
But I mean, I'm happy to contribute. Just having some real conversations based on the actual work that we do. You get to pick a lot, and I think sometimes if you don't talk about it, someone will make the same mistakes we've made, and we're not helping much around.
That's true.
I hope it gives some thought process and thought-provoking kind of thing.
Definitely, quite insightful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of HealthPod Africa. I hope to see you on the next one. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, so that you don't miss any notifications when we publish the next episode. The podcast is now available on all streaming platforms. Please remember to tune in. Thanks. Bye.